We're back out here once again, and it's the video you've all been waiting for. That's right, it's the top lures and baits for 2023 countdown, where we go category by category and pick a winner for each one. And at the end, we're going to pick an overall champion. You don't want to miss this one, so stick around. There we go. Gotcha. Got him. Ah, there we go. Yeah, buddy. We got him. There we go. I'm on. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Ooh, I got him. Gotcha. That's good. And here is this video's featured comment. Congratulations! If you would like to have a chance to have your comment featured in an upcoming video, all you've got to do is leave a comment. And now, on with the video. Welcome back to Lowbrow Fishing, and here we are again, December. 2023 sure was an eventful year, wasn't it? It was probably my best bass fishing year that I could ever remember. It was a really great year. I had so much success with various different presentations. And we've got a lot to cover today. But before we get into that, I just want to take a few minutes to reflect on some of the great things that happened in 2023. You know, one of them being, and probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest thing that happened to me this year, is that my wife got the Bassin bug. Now, we've been married almost 35 years. That's more than a lot of you viewers have been on this planet. And it's been a great roller coaster ride. But, you know, I got to be honest, my wife is the best fishing buddy I've ever had. And a lot of guys may want to go to the lake to get away from their wife for a while. And, you know, I guess I can understand that. But for me, I like having her out there with me. She is a great companion. And watching her catch some really nice fish, some really big fish, you know, even outdoing me on many occasions, it was a lot of fun and I was very happy for her. So, you know, that was one of the things that I was really overjoyed about this year. And another thing was, well, I was able to catch some really nice fish. I caught 5-pounders, 6-pounders, 7-pounders. Now, I didn't set my PB this year, but that's okay. I don't know if I'm ever going to catch another 13-pound, 10-ounce monster like I did about 6 or 7 years ago out on the big lake. And one of these days, I'm going to go into the story about that, how that all played out. But I just want to take a few minutes to reflect on some of the great bass catches that I had this year and kind of relive that, you know, as we can reflect on what a great year 2023 was as far as bass fishing goes. We're going to get a weight on him, see how much he weighs, she weighs. This is a huge bass. This is a huge bass. Get over here, you. This thing is a big one. Yes, I'm recording. It's a good question, but this may be the biggest one. Ooh, he's huge. This one's pretty big, huh, honey? Ooh. Oh my goodness. I need the net. I need the net. Come on. There we go. That's another Goliath. Look how much little line I have left.
Okay, 6 pounds.
He's gonna be pretty. He's pretty heavy. Oops, this one here is a flat out toad. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That is a straight up toad, hon. Here, let me bring the net to you. There we go. That's another giant. Oh, that's a good one. He's pulling the boat everywhere, so I got you. Oh, that's a... Oh, Lowbrow got an 8-pounder. Ooh. 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 So it's time to get this show rolling. We have a lot of ground to cover. We've got a lot of categories, 10 to be exact, and an overall champion. We're going to look at some of the contestants for each category, the ones that did well for me, and we're going to pick a winner. And at the very end, out of all of those winners, we're going to pick an overall champion. Do you have any guesses about what it's going to be? Put your guesses in the comment section below. But first of all, we're going to start with jigs. No surprise, everybody knows that I'm a huge jig angler. And this guy right here, this is the Strike King Hack Attack fluorocarbon jig. Now, this is a little bit different kind of a jig than I'm used to. It's got a screw lock right there. It's got a shorter shank hook. It's got a heavy duty brush guard on it. But I'm telling you what, this was an amazing jig for me all year. It did great. I caught plenty of fish on it. So that's the first contestant in the jig category. The next contestant in the jig category is this guy right here. This is a Googan Thick flipping jig. And this is a great jig. I mean, I'm telling you what, I probably caught the biggest jig fish I caught all year on this exact jig. Just brown and green, nothing crazy, and it worked so well. And then lastly, well, we've got good old Strike King football jig. And you can see how beat up this thing is. This thing did good work for me, especially out at the Big Lake. This might have been my best producing jig at the Big Lake, but we've got to consider overall all the fisheries that I went to this year. You know, the Big Lake, the Little Lake, the Hatchet Lake, the private trophy bass lake. Those places we're looking at all together whenever I'm picking a winner. And there can really only be one winner. And I've got to go with this guy right here. So for the jig category, the winner is the Strike King Hack Attack fluorocarbon jig. I know that's a mouthful, but I started catching fish on this guy as soon as I bought it. Right after I took it out of the package, I trimmed up the skirt a little bit. We put some different trailers on here, and I'm telling you what, it was a producer from the get-go. So that's our first winner in the jig category, the fluorocarbon jig. So let's move on. What do we have for our next category? Well, it's actually the bladed jig category. Chatterbaits, vibrating jigs, those of that nature. Now, some guys don't fish a vibrating jig. They don't fish a bladed jig because they don't get bit on them. I'm telling you what, I love them. And we've got three in particular that I had a lot of success with this year. And the first one is this guy right here. This is a Strike King Thunder Cricket. It was a great jig for me. It worked well in thick cover, and it caught a lot of fish for me. And, you know, you can see it's got the painted blade on it. It's just brown and red, dull colors, nothing extravagant, and it did very well for me. Now, next up, well, we've got the Berkley Slobber Knocker. And this is kind of a different style. This is a different type of bladed jig than you might be used to seeing because it's kind of more, it's kind of got that hook keeper, if I can get that out. It's kind of got the hook keeper where it's, you know, got a little bit of weight to it. It's got some weight right there. And that blade is just a little bit different. It kind of slides more side to side than the others. So it's kind of got a different sort of design than your other types of bladed jigs. But lastly, we've got this guy. This is a Z-Man Thunder Cricket chatterbait, but it's the stealth version. It's got the smaller clear plastic blade. And this is another one that really turned me around, especially as far as jackhammers go. I'm not a huge fan of a jackhammer, at least the regular one. But this one right here, this one here has got me sold on the stealth. I was able to catch on heavily pressured bodies of water, and on days when those fish just didn't want to bite, I was able to eke out quite a few bites just on this guy alone. And as far as all three of those bladed jigs go, well, there can only be one winner. And it was just as much of a surprise to me as it is to anybody else. And that's this guy, the Jackhammer Stealth. Again, I'm not a huge fan of a jackhammer, so that really caught me out of left field. This is a great chatterbait. It's a great bladed jig. You know, I tied on with a jig trailer. I used this with a Missile Baits D-Bomb. I used it with a Berkley Pit Boss and various other trailers, and it just got bit. So when times were tough and I really needed to get a bite, this came through. So for your bladed jig category, the winner is the Jackhammer Stealth. And next up, we've got lipless crankbaits. And lipless crankbaits are one of my overall favorite presentations. They're certainly one of my favorite moving baits. And I fish them from the early pre-spawn all year long, even into the winter. It's a confidence bait for me. But in 2023, I didn't fish them nearly as much as I normally do. There were just so many different presentations that I went through this year that I just didn't fish as many lipless cranks as I normally do. But that being said, there were still two that stood out for me this year, and that is this guy right here. This is a Sixth Sense Quake 70, and this is an excellent lipless crankbait. They've got good weight to them. They've got good body style to them. This is more along that Strike King Red Eye Shad type of body style, the newer modern type of body style. And this thing really hauled in some tanks for me. That's why it's got to be on this list, because I caught some nice 5-6 pound bass with this particular crankbait. But the other one that I have on this list, well, it's an old school favorite and one that I just can't seem to put down. The old Bill Lewis rattle trap. And these things have been around forever. This is that old school style, that old school shape, that like the Cotton Cordell Super Spot, all of those older types of rattle traps. And to this day, we call them traps, don't we? A lot of guys, they don't even call them lipless crankbaits. They just call them traps. And you know what they mean. And it's all because of this. These things have been around for decades. And even in 2023, they are still effective producers. So, which is my favorite? Which one outproduced every other lipless crankbait that I had this year? Well, I got to go with the Bill Lewis rattle trap. It just worked so well for me. This year, especially as we move from spring into summer and into late summer, this just kept catching fish. And the more I kept it tied on all the way through September, the more it would catch fish for me. So in the lipless crank category, I've got to go with the old Bill Lewis rattle trap. Even after all these decades, these things can still outproduce so many other types of crankbaits. Now, next up, we have build crankbaits. And this encompasses square bills, medium divers, deep divers, silent build, and all of those types of crankbaits that are not lipless. And I did a separate category for them from lipless because this year is when I actually really started to branch out and fish more build crankbaits than I ever have before. I leaned on square bills and I leaned on deep diving cranks quite a bit this year. So we've got three in this category that really stood out for me. And this one right here, this Sixth Sense Crush, this is the 100, this is the larger size. But this thing right here, this was a really great producer for me. I actually caught some nice toads with this one, which is unexpected. And even the smaller ones that I use, the 50 size, the darker size, when it, comes to getting consistent strikes, this guy right here sure did a lot for me. And another bait that you guys are going to recognize if you watch the channel over the summer is this guy right here. And this is the Lucky Craft classical leader. And you can see this poor dude is all beat up. It was new at the beginning of summer. So that pretty much right there, that's going to tell you all you need to know about how much punishment this poor crankbait endured. I mean, it did great for me. And I'm probably going to have to get a new one because that bill's getting wound down pretty good. It's getting ground down from, me grinding it in the dirt. And the paint's all flaked off and it's got bite marks all over it just from all the fish that it caught. But there was another bait that also surprised me by how well it did, and that's this. And this is a KVD. This is a silent square bill. This is, I believe, this is the 2.5, and even the larger ones, the 4.0 and even the smaller ones, the 1.5s, those silent cranks. But this one in particular, the 2.5, this particular crankbait right here, and then there was another one that had kind of a green shad pattern. Those were really great producers for me all year. They did well whenever those conditions were, whenever it was heavily pressured and there was a lot of wind, and we had sunny skies. This would really get those bass to commit. I don't know what it is about it, but I just know that using this under a lot of those conditions, whenever we had some wind, whenever it was clear out, whenever it was highly pressured, the bass seemed to go nuts over this. So I was able to get quite a few really nice bass on this. But of those three, there can only be one winner. And, well, it's got to be the classical leader, doesn't it? I mean, This was an unexpected surprise. I've never heard of these crankbaits before, and once I tied this on, it was immediate that this was going to do the trick. I mean, you don't get to be this beat up, and not catch a lot of bass. So this is going to be one that I'm going to be tying on next year for sure. I might even throw it a little bit this winter. We'll see. But as far as the crankbaits go, the build crankbaits category, it's got to be the Lucky Craft Classical Leader. Now, next up, we're getting to some soft plastics. And if you've watched the channel this year, you know that I fished a lot of soft plastic jerkbaits. I use them, not just on something like a donkey rig, which, Steve Rogers, I'm still working on that challenge, man. I'm also using them as chatterbait trailers, bladed jig trailers, and I like to rig them weightless, on a Texas rig and let them work that way. But there were 3 particular brands that I fished all year that really worked well for me. No surprise, one of them is going to have to be the Zoom Super Fluke. It's the mainstay. This is the one that everybody fishes, and with good reason. It is an excellent fluke. Both this and the Junior did a lot of work for me. And another one that a lot of people are going to go with is the KVD Perfect Plastics Caffeine Shad from Strike King. These are soft and they're so workable in so many different situations, and they catch fish. And lastly, we've got kind of a surprise, kind of an outlier here, kind of like a wild card, a dark horse, and that's going to be the old Cream. The cheap $1.25 Cream that you get at Walmart is going to be on this list. I can't ignore it. It's a great bladed jig trailer, and even on a Texas rig, I have caught so many fish with these things. It might be cheap, but they catch fish, so it's got to be on this list. But of all 3 of those, which one stands out the most? Which is the one that I've got to go with for the overall winner? Well, I'm going to have to go with the Caffeine Shad. They're the most versatile, they're the most supple, they give me most choices in most situations, and I just caught a whole pile of fish on these this year. So for 2023, in the soft plastic jerkbait category, the winner is going to be the Caffeine Shad. Now, next up, we've got soft plastic swim baits. And again, this is another one of those categories where I had a lot of success with varying types of brands, varying types of styles. But which ones were the best? Well, we've got 3 to choose from. First of all, we've got the Yum Scottsboro. No surprise, these are great little swim baits. They've got an awesome body style. They've got a realistic swim in the water, and the bass are just attracted to these. I caught so many bass on these this year, and I'd never fished with them before this year. I'd never seen these before this year, but as soon as I tied them on a jig head, they worked great. I caught, I don't know, probably the biggest swim bait fish I caught all year on one of these. And so that's got to be saying something considering how many that I caught. But another one that produced so well for me, and one that I just can't ignore, is the old Strike King Rage Swimmer. This is a popular standby bait. This is one that so many people trust, even more than something like a Keitech, which didn't make this list. I'll let you know that right now. There is no Keitech on this list. And that's because this kind of bumped that out of there. And when I'm using something like the lowbrow rig, which is what you guys know as, because I take a skirt off a swim jig and I fish it, and I'm usually fishing it with one of these. And it's been super effective doing that. So I've got to have this in the running for that reason alone. Now, lastly, again, we've kind of got a dark horse, a wild card, and that is the Eco Tungsten Pro Swing Impact. I picked these up at Ollie's for super cheap, and these essentially replaced my Keitechs. They're about half the price of a Keitech, and they're not quite as soft, but they're actually better for me that way because they don't tear up. I can get more than one bite. I can come through grass a little bit better and not have to change my baits out. So this has got to be on the list. And because of the fact that I caught so many fish on it, this is another one that did really good on the lowbrow rig. So who's the winner? Who's the overall champion in the swim bait category? Well, we got to go with the tried and true Rage Swimmer. They're so versatile. I can fish them on a swim jig. I can fish them as just a regular, swim head jig. I can do all sorts of things with them. I can rig these on a Texas rig and fish them weightless that way. Or I can put a little bit of, a weighted EWG and fish them that way. They work so well in various situations. And the versatility, that's what's going to give these the edge over the others. Now, it's impossible to talk about jigs and not talk about jig trailers, right? And I fished a lot of different types of jig trailers this year, and not just on jigs. They were Texas rigs, they were punching rigs, so I went through quite a few packs, and it was hard to narrow it down to just 3. But I was able to with a lot of thought. And the first one is going to be a Rage Grub. You know, these are awesome, awesome little trailers. You know, they sell them in the packs with the jigs in the Walmart store. And there's a reason why they do, because these are versatile. They work so well. I can use them on a small jig like a Bitsy Bug, all the way up to a 3/4 ounce flipping jig. And I've even used these on a chatterbait from time to time whenever I want just a little bit more kick, but you know, I'm not going to go to that paddle tail. This works perfectly. Now, another jig trailer that worked great for me is a Berkley Pit Boss. I love these things. These I can fish on a Texas rig. They're great as a punching rig, and they're great as a jig trailer. As a matter of fact, I even used these as a buzzbait trailer and was able to get bites with that. So obviously, versatility and the number of fish they caught, they've got to be on the list. But there's a newcomer to the list this year, one that I just started fishing in 2023, and that's the Missile Baits D-Mount. And I fished these on the back of that Jackhammer Stealth, and I used them as a Texas rig and a lot on the punching rig, and they were able to catch fish for me in all 3 of those ways. So again, because of versatility and because of the number of fish that they caught, this has got to be on that list. But who's the overall winner? Which one is going to take it in the jig trailer category? Well, it's got to be the Berkley Pit Boss. Year in and year out, I can consistently rely on these to get the job done. 2023 was no different. I have several different types that I like to use, even the old Havoc style, which I have piles of bags, you know. But this right here, if you need a jig trailer, if you need a Texas rig, if you need a punching bait, you know, or if you even need a buzzbait trailer, you can count on these guys. They will get the job done. Now, this is one of the categories I know people were expecting, I know people were waiting for, and that is the soft plastic stick bait. It's one of the things that I'm known for. I fish a lot of worms, whether I'm Texas rigging them, whether I'm wacky rigging them, or even putting them on a Waco rig, which if you're not fishing, you really need to give it a try. So after the hundreds that I used, after how many different brands, I don't know which ones are going to be the top of the heap, which ones are going to be in the running for best stick bait of the year. Well, we've got the Strike King Shimmy Stick. This is a great overall worm. To me, it does everything that I needed to do. It's a little bit more dense, it's got a little bit more salt, and it sinks fairly fast. So it's a very good worm for a wacky rig, and it works great on a Texas rig. You know, if you need a faster fall rate, you don't want to wait for 1,000 years if you're fishing a little bit deeper water with a wacky rig. This right here, this is a great worm, and they have a flavor and a scent to them that just seems to attract fish. These things were money out on the Trophy Bass Lake. Strike King Shimmy Sticks, these are what I was getting all of my bites with on worms. This is what I used. And once I started using these, I didn't find any reason to change up the type of worm that I was using. But next in line, you know, we've got to have it on here. It's a classic. It's one that everybody loves. The good old Yum Dinger. There cannot be a worm list, a stick bait list, without mentioning these. These things right here, while they are budget friendly, they've caught so many fish for so many anglers, whether you're a bank angler, whether you're a boat angler. I've got thousands of these. I promise you, that is not hyperbole. I've got thousands of Yum Dingers. I have so many packets of these. You know, I don't even know how many. I've got an entire tub full of nothing but Yum Dingers, a big tub. So you know how I feel about them if I've got that many. But lastly, again, we've got kind of a dark horse here, one that's kind of sneaking up from behind, and that is the Cream Stick Bait. These are $1.25 at Walmart. They're a little on the tough side, but that makes them durable. And I've caught just as many fish with these things than I have with the Yum or the Strike King. So it's going to be a really tough decision which one of these is going to eke out the victory. Which one of these is going to be my number one stick bait for the year 2023? And, well, it's going to have to be the cream. The value of the price, how much I'm paying per pack, $1.25, in that bottom bargain bin, and the fact of how many fish I caught with these. They're cheap, and I'm catching fish with them. What more can you ask for? So I've got to go with this as the number one stick bait for 2023. Now, next up, well, we've got topwater, and this was the best topwater year that I've ever had. I only started recently really catching a lot of topwater fish in the past couple of years or so. And this year, 2023, I caught more topwater fish than I could possibly count. And a lot of it, well, was thanks to these three baits that are vying for the championship spot in the topwater category. The first one, you knew it was going to be here, the Boy Howdy. These things were great. Whether it was the prop version or the tail-weighted version, I caught so many fish with these. But only the prop version is on this list. Only the prop version is in the running. The tail-weighted one, didn't quite have everything that I wanted as far as being in the contenders. This, I ended up catching a few more fish on. I ended up catching a few larger fish on. So this is what won out over the tail-weighted. So the prop version of the Boy Howdy, that's definitely in the running. And it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody because of how much I've raved about these. Now, next up, well, we've got this scum frog. This scum frog really, really came through for me. And especially later on in the year, as I was fishing shallower and shallower and more vegetated areas, this frog fished places that no other bait could possibly get to. And it just worked. I caught fish. I caught fish out of slop. I caught fish back in, little holes where nobody else could get to, no other bait could get to. It did its job, and it did it remarkably well. So obviously this little scum frog has got to be on the best topwater list. But there's one more. And again, this is going to be one that really isn't a surprise to anyone if you've watched this channel over the year. And that is a Heddon Spook Jr. This little Spook Jr. here and the bone-colored one, and I've got a baby bass colored one. Between the three of them, I probably caught more fish on the Spook than I did any other type of topwater. Whether they were small ones, whether they were large ones. This guy right here did amazingly well for me. It's a confidence bait for sure. I'm still throwing a Spook here in December. Topwater baits, not just topwater in general, but Spooks in particular, because of how much confidence I have in them. So obviously for that reason, the number of fish that I caught, they've got to be on this list. But which bait was the cream of the crop? Which bait stands above all the rest? Well, I don't think it's going to be a surprise. I've got to go with the Boy Howdy. Reliably and predictably all year long, I was able to not only catch numbers of fish, but I caught tanks with this. The largest topwater fish I caught all year, I caught on this particular bait. So it's got to be the winner for this year. So for 2023, the Boy Howdy is the best topwater bait. So we're down to the last category, and that is jerkbaits. And for 2023, well, this was definitely the year of the jerkbait. I caught more fish on a jerkbait this year than I ever have in my entire life. Expanding how I fish them, how often I'm fishing them. They're not just a wintertime bait. They are definitely a year-round bait. A lot of anglers are discovering that, and they're seeing exactly how effective they are. So in this category, we've got 4, because I had 4 that I just couldn't choose between. They did so well. This guy right here, the old H2O Express, and this thing is all chewed up. I've had this thing for years. There's not much left to it, but it still catches fish. I caught a pile of fish on this thing this year. This is my old standby. It works great, and it's also the first contender for jerkbait of 2023. Now, another one that's not going to be a surprise to anyone who watches this channel is going to be the old Smithwick Rattlin' Roll, the cat turd. This thing is ugly. The colors on this shouldn't work, but they do. And this is a floating jerkbait, but I caught a lot of fish on this thing this year. Some were smaller, but some were really, really large. This one right here was one of those where if I needed to catch a fish, I'd tie this on and I would get bites. There's something about it that those fish just wanted to attack. So obviously it's got to be on the best of list. And next, well, we've got another relative newcomer, and that's this KVD 200 in this chrome shad color. And I've got a gold one and a white one. But these jerkbaits, these little 200 KVD jerkbaits from Strike King, these things are great. They don't cost a lot. You know, none of the jerkbaits on this list cost a lot. I think the Rattlin Rogue may be the most expensive at about $9. This one's probably about $9 too. But, you know, the price was a consideration. The number of fish that I caught with is a number of considerations. You know, this particular bait right here caught the biggest jerkbait fish that I had caught all year. This was the one that caught the PB for the year, you know, jerkbait. And it was a nice fish. So, you know, it's got to be on the list. It caught a lot of fish for me. It's a great bait. I worked it in a lot of different situations, cloudy, windy, overcast, you know. It even worked good when there was some pressure on the water too, which was kind of surprising. Those bass in my lakes, they really liked attacking these. But last, that's on the jerkbait list. Well, this is going to be the one that everybody was waiting for me to put on here. And that's the Yo-Zuri 3DB. This is my, you know, this is the jerkbait that really did it for me this year. This is the one that surprised me. This is the one that I bought on a whim at Walmart off the shelf, and they just started tearing them up. So this has got to be on the list simply for the fact that it came out of nowhere and it blew away my expectations. And even in the wintertime, you know, it's still catching fish. So which one did the best? Which one has got to be the top of the heap? Well, there's so many to choose from, and it really wasn't as easy of a decision as you might think it is. But the winner's got to be the Yo-Zuri, right? The winner has got to be the Yo-Zuri simply from the fact that it stormed out of nowhere and just really ripped those bass. I was able to catch so many fish, so many quality fish in so many different types of situations. It works great underwater. It stands out underwater. It suspends nicely, and it's easy to work with. It casts a mile, and it catches a ton of fish. So it's got to be the Yo-Zuri 3DB. So that brings us to the overall champion for 2023. And which is it going to be? Well, we've got 3 that are vying for that particular title. And these are the best of the best. These are the baits that I leaned on the most, I relied on the most, and ones that did the best work for me. It's a classical leader from Lucky Craft. This thing obviously did great work. The other one obviously is going to be the Yo-Zuri. This is one that I just can't leave out of the list for overall. It did such a great job for me, and I'm still impressed every time I use this. And of course, the Boy Howdy. You guys know how much I've talked about these. You know how much I love these things and how well they work for me all year. So which one is going to take home the gold? Which one is going to be the overall champion? You know, they all have their strong cases. They all caught fish. They all worked in various situations. But at the end of the day, it's going to have to be the Boy Howdy. This thing just produced. Now, that Yo-Zuri jerkbait, it was a close second. I'm not going to lie. It was a lot harder to decide than it might seem. You know, that Yo-Zuri jerkbait really did well. The classical leader did great. But the problem with that one is I just wasn't able to fish it enough of the year for it to be considered the overall champion. When I was able to fish it, it did great. But it's only great in windows. You know, certain times of the year, it's not going to do as well as other times of the year. This, I'm still catching fish on this thing. It's December, and I'm still catching fish with this. You know, same thing with this. But at the same time, I've caught bigger fish with this, and probably about the same numbers as I have that Yo-Zuri. But, you know, it's really hard to beat a topwater bait. And anytime you can get a topwater bait that will perform consistently in different situations for you, you know, you land in really big fish with it, that's got to be your winner. So congratulations to the Cotton Cordell Boy Howdy, the overall winner for 2023. So there you have it, my best baits for 2023. I hope you really enjoyed the format that we did with the awards presentation. You know, for 2024, it's probably going to be an entirely different set of baits as I try to expand and I try to, you know, use different baits and explore new horizons whenever it comes to bass fishing. Who knows what it'll come with? I might have things like a drop shot and a Carolina rig on there. You never know. But until then, thanks for watching Lowbrow Fishing. We'll catch you in the next one.